So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Finn, for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Could you kick us off by telling us a bit about your background and what you do today?
Yeah, so I am not your typical nutrition professor at Miami Dade College. I grew up in Lebanon, and I've always struggled from a very young age with binge eating, sugar addiction, depression, anxiety, acne, the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And I figured that if I went to school to become a dietitian, then that would solve all my problems. And it didn't. And it only brainwashed me with the wrong types of information, because I started trying to follow what they would tell me was healthy. Eat all the carbs, the food pyramid, which is, they changed the graphics, but the recommendation is pretty much the same: high carb, low fat. And it only made things worse. And after, doing my bachelor's and my master's in nutrition and dietetics over there, I also did my dietetics internship at a hospital, and I sat for the exams to become a licensed dietitian. So I'm a licensed dietitian. It's like similar to a board exam, I guess you could call that. And then I flew to Miami and I did my Ph.D. in exercise physiology and nutrition at the University of Miami. I've taught for the American College of Sports Medicine. I would literally prepare their students in intensive workshops to pass the ACSM personal trainer certification, which is the hardest one to pass in the in the worldwide, like 60% first passing rate for the first time you take the test. So I did that. I taught at the University of Miami and DeVry University. All that kind of stuff. Nutrition and exercise physiology courses. And currently what I'm focused on is still teaching Miami Dade College. It's like a little bit on the side. I do enjoy it. So I teach nutrition, and I also take a lot of clients, but the main focus is growing, spreading the message and growing the brand and doing social media, doing the YouTube and the Instagram, which I'm assuming that's how you found me.
It is. Yeah. I found you actually through the Reversed TV series.
Oh, yes.
And, I saw, because I'm a big follower of Dr. Anthony Chaffee and Dr. Robert Kiltz, and some of their stuff I really agree with, some a little bit less so. But, I saw you guys all out in Costa Rica and having a great time and talking about all these, great things and nutrition and carnivore and stuff. So I actually came across you there. And so, like, the message is getting out. Like, it's funny how these like tentacles of the message and like meat and animal product diet sort of gets out.
I love it. Yeah, we're so excited about that. This is going to be the first mainstream TV show to spread the message about the carnivore diet, which is our species-specific diet, which is the diet that we ate for 99.99% of our existence as a species here on Earth, when we had no heart disease, no diabetes, no obesity, no acne, none of the stuff that we're suffering from today. And now all of a sudden, they're trying to tell us that this ancestral food that made us human, that allowed us to be the healthiest version of us, all of a sudden now it's causing cancer, it's and it's all based on the poorest quality type of evidence, which is epidemiology or correlational studies, which are inherently flawed, starting with the first type of collection tool, which is the food frequency questionnaire that they use to collect data. In and of itself, it's deeply flawed, not to mention the hypotheses that they start off with. The vast majority of nutrition studies are looking at junk food dieters, and then they take them off and put them on a standard American diet, or like they're just comparing them to another group, right, on a plant-based diet. So of course, if you're going to measure a junk food dieter versus a whole foods plant-based dieter, you're going to see improvement, right? Because you're not taking the TBHQ, the preservatives, the artificial sweeteners, all that crap. You're not ingesting that. Can we say bad words on your podcast?
Absolutely. Please. They're encouraged.
Fantastic. You're my kind of people. And so, of course, you're going to get the same kind of result when you're doing that, because you're not bothering to really get to the root, to answer the root question, which is, what is the optimal human diet, right? Nobody has bothered to look at what would happen if we get all of these vegetarians and plant-based dieters and put them on a carnivore diet. Now we're seeing what's happening because of the interviews we're doing, because we're collecting those case studies and documenting everything on the carnivore websites like Rivero.com. And we're seeing that pretty much everybody tries to go vegan, vegetarian to help themselves or just to be healthy, and then their health deteriorates, and then they fix it with a carnivore diet. But we need the studies in order to change the dietary guidelines. It's not enough to just say, look in the past, this is the optimal human diet. We need studies right now. Harvard started with the first study, but it was still, using a survey. It wasn't like a randomized control trial.
They did like a specific carnivore study, or what was their study?
Yeah, so they got a bunch of carnivores that have been, I think they were supposed to be on the carnivore diet for at least 6 months, and they tracked everything that improved. Some of them were at least for 6 months, some of them for 2 years on a carnivore diet, and they showed that pretty much like over 94% reversed, stopped drugs, reversed diabetes, got better. Every single thing you can think of got better. And they just felt amazing. And so that's like an exploratory, qualitative kind of study, sort of like a precursor. So once you publish that, now it's easier to get funding for the real stuff, the randomized control trials.
But all of the funding comes from these big organizations who often have conflicts of interest, who are trying to stop people seeing this stuff. Like, they're funded by the big sugar industries. They're funded by the big confectionery producers.
Coca-Cola, Nestle, I think I was reading up to today, I think they give like 11 million or 15 million dollars to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I remember watching this podcast with Dr. Anthony Chafee, I think a few days ago. Also, he was mentioning how Coca-Cola spends 11 times more on nutrition research than our NIH, the National Institutes of Health, our government that's supposed to fund the research.
It's wild.
Yeah, we've been fooled, and I know I've been fooled, and that's why I've struggled with this for far, far longer than what I should have, unfortunately.
So tell us about that story, from like binge eating, depression, anxiety, being overweight, struggling with that. So where did the binge eating start, and what was your sort of pattern?
Yeah, so it started once I started dieting. So the first time somebody told me I was fat, I was like, I think 11. I still remember that kid.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
no. Oh no.
Yeah, it's like you'll never forget that. I remember we were just like in class doing some like a little bit of downtime, and he just like very casually said, "Oh yeah, but you're fat," or something like, "You're fat."
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, right. And that's when my preoccupation with body image dieting began, and I started first trying the diets that I thought would work. For some reason, my 11, 12-year-old brain thought that digestive biscuits were healthy because they would promote them as helping digestion. They would promote them, especially in Lebanon, the ads would promote them as a healthy snack.
Wow.
So of course I fell for it, and I would have like just a few digestive biscuits a day, and I would last maybe 2-3 days, and then I would
So you were just eating digestive biscuits?
Nothing but digestive biscuits.
Okay.
That's all I remember eating for those were my diets. And then of course, by the third or fourth day, I've fallen off the wagon. But the way that it would happen is that I would wait for everybody to go to sleep or they're not home, and I would dig into a whole jar of Nutella, like the whole thing. I would eat it.
Wow.
This is the most sweet, like it's like fudge. It's
it's
horrible.
Delicious.
It is. And the cycle would continue over and over again. And then I saw my first dietitian at 14, and she gave me the food. It was the food guide pyramid that they were working with, because they still had not come up with the new My Plate, which is again not that different. So it was all carbs. And my mom started trying to follow this more and cook for us more carby foods. And I remember my relatives would say, are you sure you're supposed to eat all that pasta? It would be like a bowl of pasta with Diet Coke, because Diet Coke doesn't matter,
Wow. Yeah.
So of course that never worked. And the eating disorder just got worse, and it became more of a, restrict binge cycle.
So at this time, were your parents not saying like what's going on, or like was your weight also yo-yoing? Like, were people concerned?
Yeah,
or
definitely yo-yoing. It was really a lot of, I feel like we always were in survival mode in Lebanon. It wasn't like this important thing, it wasn't like all of the other needs are met, and now let's talk about healthy eating.
Wow. Yeah.
No, it was like, are we going to be able to pay tuition for your school or not? Or should we put you in a public school? And public schools in Lebanon is horrific,
In what way?
Every way. Like there's no way. I don't know. I mean, I have to say, genetically, like my brain was always, I've always been, A student, always. they would tell me like, you don't have to do your final exams, you're good every year.
That's nice.
So yeah, maybe I could have pulled it off, going to public school and still be able to get to a PhD level, but I don't know for sure. Yeah, they wanted me to like skip a grade. My mom was scared. She's like, no, I don't want her to I don't want anything. Let's just keep her in her grade, because they were
Just,
like,
it's all working now. Let's just not rock the boat.
Yeah. So maybe I would have, still been fine even if I went to a public school, but thankfully I didn't have to go through that experience. A funny thing, my mom tells a story when all the kids, the first day in kindergarten, the first few weeks in kindergarten, the first time you ever go to school, all the kids, everybody was crying. Everybody was freaking out. I was the only child in that school that wasn't crying. I was happy. I was excited. It's like, we're going to learn new things. A few weeks later, everybody got settled. Everybody adapted. I'm the one that started getting frantic, and I would cry, and it was like, what's going on? What's happening to our child? She would go, my mom went to talk to the teachers and everybody. Turns out I was getting bored because they're not teaching us fast enough.
Wow, that's normally the other way around.
Right? It's like, I was expecting a lot more, I guess. What's the word?
Like stimulation.
Stimulation.
Or yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I guess maybe I would have pulled it off. But anyway, the point is, we were living in survival mode, and it wasn't like, you didn't talk about your feelings. I always say, like, I grew up in an emotionally constipated family. And I don't want to, not to throw anybody under the bus, but it was hard. It was hard emotionally, and so those weren't the kinds of stuff that we would talk about,
Yeah. And then so obviously that fed into, like, I guess, emotional eating. And like through that time, you're sort of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's almost, comforting yourself by controlling the food that you put. You couldn't probably control the outside environment, so that was an element you could control.
I don't know if I ever got high off of trying to control my diet, because that would be similar to an anorexic, right? They get high off of being able to restrict. I don't think I've ever been able to restrict, for too long. So it was like just trying to create a caloric deficit for a few days, but then it was a binge. I never felt in control ever.
And then what changed? Like, what stimulated you to change that mindset? Because lots of people will continue that cycle until they're severely obese and just at their wits' end, and it's bariatric surgery time, or it's weight loss medication pills.
So as much as I criticize traditional academia and traditional nutrition programs, I have to admit that when I started learning about calories in, calories out, macros, and it's okay, even if you had something off plan, you can still lose weight on that day, as long as you don't go overboard and you can fit those calories in. So to a certain degree, just understanding that if I eat something off plan, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. I can still reach my goal, and I'll just have to maybe change what I was going to have for dinner and to accommodate the snack that I have. So that gave me a sense of control. That started to normalize a little bit the binging. And I went back, I started losing weight back again. And I was excited just to become being done with school. High school was awful, and I was like, now I was waiting tables, and I had some pocket money to buy some of the stuff that I wanted. So my mindset started getting better. And then that first semester when I started my master's, I had finished, I became a dietitian, licensed dietitian and everything. And that first semester of doing my master's, I started realizing that I didn't want the end product. Like, if I got my master's, then what? Am I gonna just work for like $1,000 in Lebanon? Or if you're lucky and you pull some crazy strings over there, you might get $2,000. Where you're working, a full-time job and you're not getting credit. You're basically just writing up the papers for the PI, the principal investigator, or the head researcher. And it wasn't me, and I had a nervous breakdown. My hubby tells me, stop saying it's a nervous breakdown. It's not a nervous breakdown. I was like, how would you describe a nervous breakdown? I would literally be in bed most of the day. I barely managed to finish that course in that master's. Thankfully, I had only taken like 1.5 courses, really short, not that hard in that first semester. So I managed to pass, but it was hard to focus. And the only thing that I would eat was literally a muffin that my mom would get me that had chocolate in it. And you know those cheap muffins, you know,
Yeah.
when you go to like a cheap bakery.
Yeah. Loads of ingredients.
Yeah, it just it tastes weird.
Yeah.
Doesn't taste, it's not like a Starbucks muffin. We're not
Mm,
talking like crazy good
yeah.
stuff.
Oh, you
That
like the
was it.
Starbucks muffins?
Oof, they're good. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can't remember though. The good thing is I can't remember last time I had it, so I guess that's a good thing.
Mm, mm.
So yeah, I would have that, and I would have a glass of whiskey.
That's good
That was
nutrition.
my diet for months on end. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and that was just because I lost the direction. I didn't have desire to, it wasn't anything inspiring. Everybody's depressed in Lebanon at the way that just everything is, you know, the way that life is over there. And then my boyfriend dumped me because I would like, we'd go out to have dinner and I would just start crying out of nowhere. We'd be like with his friends, you know, and I would just start
He was like,
crying.
I've had enough of this.
I'm out. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me because my stupid little brain was like, the reason also why I was in that nervous breakdown thing is because I felt stuck. I felt like I had a boyfriend, so I can't like just leave, you know,
Mm,
which was so dumb, you know, like I'm sure he wouldn't have done the same for me. I'm sure like if he had some opportunity to leave, he would have left probably.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe not, but I'm pretty sure that that would have
This is
happened.
the one this is the one that did leave you're talking about?
That's the guy who dumped me, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, he did leave.
Well, 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 yeah, that's true. You're right. That's true. But like, but when I was with him, that made me feel like I had no options but to stay in Lebanon and try to make things work in
Mm,
Lebanon. And I
yeah, I
couldn't
got
make
it.
them work in Lebanon because I didn't want to do anything that was available to me. I wanted more. I remember I remember even like first, second year in college, I remember saying I want to continue on to do a PhD. So I already had that, you know, from a very
Mm,
young age. And I guess I kind of forgot it when I got in that relationship. So thankfully that relationship ended. And the moment that happened, I, of course, it didn't like right away. I didn't get out of this right away. But then I got the idea. I was like, wait a second. If I do my doctorate, I can, you know, all of a sudden make a good money. I can leave Lebanon, you know, and the moment that that happened, it pulled me out of it and the whole thing ended.
mm,
Um, and what happened then, I decided that I'm going to finish my master's in record time. So then I just took all the credits, everything, did nothing but study. And at the same time, got all the books for the exams to get into grad school, to get into the doctorate. You had to do like, I think it was a SAT. I can't remember if that was what I did. So, and I didn't want to leave anything for chance. So I got like literally all the books,
mm,
more than one. You usually get one, you prepare for it. I got like 3 or 4 for every test. I wanted to be guaranteed that I was going to get it. And I applied, you know, to all the PhD programs. And thankfully, all of them actually accepted me, you know, Baylor, South Dakota University, just because the professor was like, yeah, I'll take you. That was the first one I got in
mm.
contact with. Like, okay, let's go. And then 2 in Florida, and I think University of Florida. So and
At
then
the,
I came here.
but at this stage, were you still going by like the food pyramid is
Yeah, I was still, yeah, because I'm
the
thinking
golden road to
survival.
health or
I'm
yeah.
still like, yeah, like I'm not depressed anymore. I'm excited about it, but like on the day, but I'm generally still trying to eat healthy and I'm still trying to eat what the pyramid is telling me to eat. Yeah, it was still
Mm.
that 100%.
So I
Even
mean
when I came to Miami, I was still doing that. I would still like cook rice and curry and stuff like that. Call my
yeah.
mom, how do I make those recipes? Yeah.
because like I'm looking at the two sides. So I've got a car honking outside. I'm looking at the two sides. Like one is you're off in Costa Rica with a bunch of people talking about carnivore,
Mm.
and you go back a number of years and you're like following the food pyramid. So like
Yeah.
how
Oh, that progression.
yeah, where was the change?
It started also at 18. I would have a lot of acne, and I saw all the dermatologists, and they gave me all the drugs, spironolactone. I did Accutane twice. I did spironolactone for 2 years, Accutane 2 rounds, like 6, 8 months every time. Antibiotics. I did birth control pills, and nothing helped
What sort of side
until
effects did you get from those things?
I don't know. I don't know. They say Accutane can make you suicidal. I've
Mm,
had suicidal thoughts
that's
in
what
my
I had
dreams.
heard.
Yeah.
Mm,
I don't know. It's hard to tell. I wasn't even trying to look for them. I was just trying to, again, it was always survival mode, always between, working and studying. My back has always been against the wall. So yeah, nothing worked until I started doing my own research. The internet it's kind of in its infancy, but I did come across Dr. Lauren Cordain's book, The Acne Cure, and printed it out. They couldn't like mail it to Lebanon. I had to they send it to me as a PDF and an email, and it worked, and now I understand I could have gotten even better results because the paleo, I was still doing fruits a lot. I'm still doing like meat and fruits basically every meal.
That was the cure that was in the PDF that you downloaded. It was meat and fruits. Okay.
It's all about how the paleo diet is what we're supposed to eat, how hunter-gatherers don't have acne, and even their teenage kids don't have acne. And so, yeah, I tried it. It worked. And that it was around the time when I left to Miami. So now, again, it's like another overwhelming experience. As excited and happy as I was, I came here by myself. I didn't have a friend. I didn't have a family member, nothing, nothing.
A big step into the void.
It's crazy. I didn't even have a car, So that was another kind of survival, trying just to keep my head above water that first semester. So I remember trying to buy more paleo food. I remember buying mango and chicken and things like that. But definitely adherence was very poor. And so from there, a few months later, I met my husband. So I met my husband 11 months after landing in Miami. And then just meeting him, I had somebody, he was taking care of me. He was like, you need a gun. You can't live by yourself without a gun. Like, he got me everything.
Oh, yeah. So you got a gun now?
Yeah. Everything. Like,
have you used it yet?
Huh?
Have you used it yet?
No, I'm scared, but we're gonna do again. In a few weeks, we're gonna go and he's gonna teach me how to shoot because we moved in right away, and so he's there. Why do I need it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was so scared the first time he gave me I tried to I don't know what I was trying to do with it, and it got stuck in a certain position, and I freaked out, and I called him, and I put it on all the way on the floor, facing away from potential people. Yeah, it was scary. But I was no longer in survival. He helped me buy a car. I didn't even have a car, so that's when I started looking into higher things. Okay, so now let's really pay attention to what we're doing with our diet. Is it working? Is it not? And at the same time, I was having a lot of anxiety from teaching at the University of Miami. I'm a 25-year-old kid that just started their doctorate in a completely different, in exercise physiology. I was all nutrition before, right? So I'm literally being taught exercise physiology graduate courses and expected to teach them 2 days later. It was a lot of, stress, and also teaching nutrition courses where students have all kinds of questions, and I still didn't have a solid enough experience in public speaking or even a knowledge base. So that gave me a lot of anxiety. So I would Google what is the best diet for that. And I came across Dr. David Perlmutter, and his website talks about high fat keto for mental health. And that's how I got into keto. So those two things are happening. I'm paying more attention to my diet. I went through a phase of just adding protein to everything, protein pancakes, just the typical, if it fits your macros, but just with protein. So I was going through that phase at the same time having anxiety and figuring out that keto helps with mental health. The first 7 days on a ketogenic diet, it felt like a light flip had switched in my brain, and my head just constant energy. And that's how I started getting really intrigued with it, and I started reading all about it. And then I realized that it's not only helpful for mental health, it's also helpful for weight and my diet. And so that's how I became a keto dieter. But I was still having the sugar addiction, the carbohydrate addiction, because you can still do a lot of keto stuff, and even if you go on my YouTube channel, you go back a little bit, you can see I had a whole playlist. They're still there on keto desserts. I'll teach you how to make, keto mousse. And
what were you making it with? With stevia and
no, what was it?
Or other artificial sweeteners?
It was a xylitol.
Xylitol, yeah.
It's a name though. There's a brand name. I forgot. I had because all that stuff I've thrown away from it's been a very long time.
Yeah.
It's like a confectioner's sugar. It's powdered sugar, but it's based, I think, off of xylitol. That's what I was
Don't know.
using. That's basically, if you go to any like keto cookbook desserts, that's the one that they use. I even wrote a book. I have a book on Amazon, keto dessert cookbook.
Wow, you went
Just
in.
love,
You went.
yeah, I went all in. And of course, I'm still addicted to those things. So
Mm,
I would, still yo-yo dieting, do a little bit good, but then binge on them. And then that binge on a keto stuff eventually becomes a binge on real stuff, the real carbs.
mm,
So it wasn't, there was still struggling. And that's how, in one of those binges where I'm like crying or just feeling awful, I'd be like, it's so funny. Like I'd be binging and not happy about it, while at the same time trying to figure out how to get out of it. And I'd be like watching Joe Rogan podcast. And that's how I discovered Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson,
mm.
Sean Baker. I mean, pretty much everybody. I can't remember how it started, which one was the first, but all of them
Yeah.
I've watched. And then I was like, am I really going to do carnivore? And then slowly but surely I
Yeah.
did.
It's amazing, like, because so many people discover it like that with Joe Rogan's podcast, and like, because Michaela Peterson, she had like really bad immuno issues, right?
Juvenile arthritis and depression and a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
And it totally disappeared with carnivore diet.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, a lion diet specifically, just beef and or lamb, salt and water. Yeah, and now she's been on it for a while. That I guess her health has improved so much that she can include fish. She can include a few other foods. I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly what they are. I do remember fish she can. But yeah, to really put everything in remission, it had to be just a lion diet, which is a stricter version of a carnivore diet. So no dairy, no eggs, no pork, no chicken. Yeah.
That's it. Some people seem to be like really immunosensitive and therefore have to get rid of this stuff, or like everything in their diet apart from just meat and salt and meat and electrolytes.
True.
And that's the only thing that will cure them. But some people are pretty healthy anyway, but just decide to do carnivore
Mm-hmm.
and then feel better from it. But some people, carnivore is obviously grown in popularity so much, and now some people are saying like you do need some carbohydrate to thrive, like Paul Saladino, who's talking about who still calls himself a carnivore, but everyone's up in arms him calling himself a carnivore because technically he's meat, fruit, and probably adding other vegetables in now. So like, what's your take on that? Are you like a purist?
Yeah. I am not convinced that you need carbohydrates. Now, if you are doing something that's not evolutionarily or ancestrally compatible, let's say you're in a physique competition or you're training insanely hard, something that like way, way higher than what our ancestors used to do, much more intense, there might be a place to try out those different carb foods. For the vast majority of people, it keeps the addiction going. When you taste the sugar, it's highly addictive, whether it's from fruits or from honey. All of the fruits that we have available to us right now in the produce section are so different than the wild versions. It's shocking to literally Google every single one of them and look at the past of it and the wild version of it and see how different it looks. Like if you just put wild watermelon, you'll see the most disgusting thing that's all seedy and like it's got pores in it. It's just not something you would eat. If you Google any kind of berry, wild versions of the berries, they're tiny, they're bitter. Potatoes, wild versions of potatoes, they're all like literally this size, this tiny. Also bitter, also toxic, also things that you wouldn't want to eat. Every single thing. Google a wild version of a banana.
Yeah.
Let's see if that's appetite. It's all seedy. There's barely any flesh in it. It's just all fiber and seeds. It's
I
like
think
there's
broccoli is only like
Mhm.
200 years old or something.
Less, yeah. So the broccoli was brought to the United States in the 1800s by Italian farmers, but it really didn't take off. People weren't including that as a traditional food until the 1950s is when they started, pushing vegetables on it, and broccoli started becoming more looked at as this health food, and people started consuming it more. And this all coincided in the 50s as well, in the mid 1900s, with the Seventh-day Adventist movement. This religious the church believed that masturbation was a sin, and that eating bland foods, especially plant-based foods is going to squash your libido. So you're not going to have the urge to masturbate, so you won't sin. And so then eating a vegetarian diet is a healthy and great diet because it's going to get you closer to God. And it's true, you're not going to have the urge to masturbate, but not because it's healthier for you, but because it's going to squash your sex hormones and it's going to decimate any kind of hormone you have. So yeah, of course, you're not going to have any libido. And
that was what
one,
we have John Harvey Kellogg to thank as well for his lovely
yeah,
cornflakes.
he's one of the the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist movement. Her name was Lena F. Cooper. She actually took John Harvey Kellogg, the cornflakes guy, under her wings, paid for his medical education, and in return, she put him in charge. He became the director of the hospital for the Seventh-day Adventist movement, and that hospital was called Battle Creek Sanitarium, and it became very popular. Henry Ford would go there. All of the famous celebrities, politicians, everybody would go there. And of course, they were popularizing a vegetarian diet, offering only vegetarian diet. Then John Harvey Kellogg took under his wing this nursing student. Her name was Ellen G. White. And I'm sorry, I mixed up the names.
Ellen G. White was the founder.
Is the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist, and Lena F. Cooper is the woman that he took under his wings, and he mentored her, and then put her in charge of the dietetics. She became the head dietitian at Battle Creek Sanitarium, offering all vegetarian diets. In her cookbooks that she wrote, she basically talks about how, God doesn't want us to hurt other animals and stuff, as like a forward to her cookbooks, to her vegetarian cookbooks, so it's all dogma, it's all religion, it has nothing to do with science. She goes on to co-found the American Dietetics Association, which is now called the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
That morphed into the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
It's the same. So it was called the American Dietetics Association, and then just a few years ago, they changed its name to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I was still in school when they changed its name, just to
it's
reflect,
crazy.
To make a more respectable academy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because we had Belinda Fettke on the podcast talking about her research into this, the Seventh-day Adventists and that sanitarium in Australia, and like her husband Gary Fettke getting silenced by the medical board and all of this stuff. I mean, it's just wild.
Yeah, I've watched all of the interviews he gave about that. He has a great interview with Judy Cho from Nutrition with Judy, where it's a 2-part series. He outlines everything that happened. Yeah.
It's crazy. I'm surprised they haven't come after Anthony Chaffee, They're
coming, but at the same time, I think people are wisening. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say people are wisening up. We're still in the minority.
I think this is the thing. Sometimes I think, are we just in an echo chamber where we're thinking, yeah, everyone's waking up against nutrition? And like I was watching, he's a guy called Dr. Alan Desmond, and he's like a vegan gastroenterologist. And I'm supposedly meant to be recording with him later today. And I'm listening to his stuff. And because I really want to try and I want to try and get to like the root of what is going on, because like he is adamant that a vegan diet is good for people. And he's like a gastroenterologist who's seeing people with digestive issues all the time. And he's advising a plant-based diet. So like there's something in there. But then I heard him on a podcast and he was saying, look, my first point of call is to remove processed foods. And I'm like, okay, we align there. That's an alignment. Like this like true. And then he's saying I would go, he wants 85 to 90% of the diet from whole foods, like unadulterated. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm with you there. There's, we're on. And then he starts talking about diet, and he starts talking about like exercise and, being outside, being in nature. And like, I'm like, yeah, cool. We all align here. This is, and then he starts saying, the research, which we know is kind of bogus from studies that are done lumping in good meat with processed foods. And so like the burgers that you get from McDonald's, they'll say that's meat consumption. And like, so that's where he's saying that there's an association with meat and colon cancers and like all of this stuff there.
That's where those associations started. And that's right. And those, they're flawed studies. That's like the whole the whole field of nutrition is literally a mountain of trash studies. Yeah,
that's the thing. And like all of the health selection bias, whereby vegetarians are more concerned about their health than if you lump in everyone. So someone who's going on a vegetarian diet is generally more concerned about their health. They're doing the yoga, they're doing the, you know, all these other things like walking outside.
Smoking.
They're not smoking, they're not drinking excessively, they're not doing all this other stuff. Whereas if you take a carnivore and say, are they smoking? Are they drinking? Are they doing like sitting all day? Like probably not. So they're the same health selection bias is not being applied to the carnivore community. So
exactly.
Like there's huge issues there, and a lot of the vegan research seems to revolve around sort of extrapolations around the microbiome and like trying to see what different constituents of fecal matter, so how the poo differentiates in a vegan's diet and how that associates with associated neurochemicals and longevity. And I'm like, hang on, these are big extrapolations that people making here.
Yeah, because here's the thing. We have such a small understanding of the microbiome. We've barely scratched the surface of understanding what bacteria are helpful for us, which ones aren't. A lot of there's a lot of researchers that will tell you lactobacillus or bifidobacteria, this is just gonna overgrow in your body. It's like a filler probiotic that they add that's not actually good for you. You don't want to overdo it with that. And then there's another camp that tells you gotta. So I think that there is something about the probiotics that we might be missing the mark on with carnivore, but it's not probably due to a lack of fiber. I think it's probably due to a lack of earthing, grounding, and exposure to soils and mud and being in nature, because those soil-based organisms, those kinds of probiotics, that used to be all around us all the time, and now we're living in neat, clean houses. We're wearing shoes all the time. We're not getting all of those kinds of soil-based probiotics on our skin. So there is something to that, and I do think we should really try and figure out what is the best way to tackle that. I don't think it's going to have to come from eating plant foods that have self-defense chemicals. It's going to trigger, multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis in a few years, if not automatically. There's that. There's also, humic acid, pubic acid. Those are also substances found in soil that seem to really help seal leaky gut. So there's a lot of, it's a little bit more than just the diet. So there is something to the whole probiotics and microbiome discussion. But those who are pushing a plant-based diet or vegan diet or vegetarian diet, they're just, again, relying on epidemiology that's looking at somebody who's eating meat but who's also smoking and not caring about their health versus somebody who's living a healthy lifestyle. This is pretty much all the nutrition studies that we have. And so, yeah, of course, the microbiome of this person is going to be better than that other person that's smoking and eating the meat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think if sometimes you have to take a step back from like the nuances of nutrition research and go like, let's just get rid of all of that paper and then say like, what makes a human perform best? Like what's going to allow them to go out and run for like a long period of time? What's going to allow them to go and like put lean mass on, muscular mass? What's going to allow them to think clearly? And then you go, okay, well, like carbs, actually, like heavy carbs, sugary based carbs, they actually stop me thinking very clearly, like, throughout the day. So like if I bring them down, I have clearer thought. Like if I have a leaner diet with higher protein and like good saturated fats, I can put on more muscle mass. Like more muscle mass, I'm more resilient to injuries, and like I can perform better and I'm stronger and like all of this stuff. And so you go like, I don't need to know about the nuances of like the microbiome and which bacteria does this and which I just need to know like the Argentine football team takes 4,000 kilos of meat with them to the World Cup. Like and they win. Like it's just like some of this logic needs to be applied because of the fact that nutrition and the research is so corrupted. Like
Yeah.
these big organizations will say, okay, we want to find a positive for this bacteria or this probiotic that we're selling. Okay, go out and they'll pay for the study. Like find us
Yeah.
that result.
Exactly. And if you're a researcher, you're going to be very careful when you're designing your study, because if your study doesn't show a benefit, then good luck getting funding again from
You
that
never get it.
company in the future. No, it is so hard to get funding. 90% of proposal grants to get funding get rejected. So you're dealing with just the 10% that get accepted. And so the vast majority of those 10% is really coming from who has the most amount of money, which are addictive food producers, those food companies. It's definitely not going to come from a farmer who's raising cows. You know, I shouldn't say farmer. You know, like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So in terms of like you working with clients, like what sort of diets do you see most effective? Like, what do you change first? Like, what do you see as the biggest issues for people losing weight? Sorry, there's 3 questions just thrown at you there.
That's fine. Yeah. This is the great thing about working with the carnivore diet. I have such an easy time getting results for my clients. Whereas when I used to do coaching before, and it's just, you know, following the pyramid and everything, I wouldn't get results. And I was like, are you sure you're not, you know, I would suspect they're not telling me what they're eating, and I would just be very suspicious. And this just no longer happens anymore. It's amazing. You know, I have a client now, he does have a lot of weight to lose, but he's dropping 2 pounds a day.
2 pounds a day?
2 pounds a day. He does have a lot of weight to lose. Yeah. My other clients that are literally 20 pounds away from their ideal body weight, 2 pounds a week. If I don't get 2 pounds a week weight loss, then we do meal adjustments. Then we'll be like, most of them aren't really working out that hard, you know? And so, because we get results so easily, that the adjustments that I tend to do is generally having them work out a little bit more intensely, or adding an extra 20 minutes a day, or just having them, you know, do the steps and make sure they get the 10,000 steps a day. And just this is most of my work. Yeah.
And you're putting them like onto like a lion diet, or like what's
it depends,
because that's extreme, right? Like for people to even just on a psychological base.
Yeah, not everybody. But I do also get a lot of tough cases. So a lot of people that come to me, I'm not the first choice. The first choice is always, you know, follow the influencer that's telling you, I'm gonna let you have carbs, and you know, those are always the first things that they try. And even on carnivore, they also don't get to me as a first line thing. They'll do the challenges where it's like, just focus on eating as much meat as you want, and then they don't realize calories still do matter. They gain weight, and that's the bulk of my clients. So then they come to me, and we have to actually measure the calories and see, you know, where is it coming from. Like I had a client that would have a whole pack of beef bacon in the morning, and that was 1,000 calories. So right there, you can kiss goodbye your caloric deficit for the day. So I have a lot of so that those are the kinds of clients that come to me. They've tried all those things, and finally, you know, they want to get over the sugar and carbohydrate addiction, but they also want to lose weight. They don't just want to do carnivore, you know, without tracking. And you sometimes have to go through it to fully understand what works for your body, because we all are tempted to believe that it's okay not to track, that it is okay to eat as much as we want, and we're not going to lose weight. And maybe for some people, genetically, they can burn through that thing and it works for them, and that's great. But a lot of people will put on body fat, right? And so after they go through that experience, then they're ready to work with me. And that's when we start getting results. But I also have a lot of clients that have autoimmune issues, which is why they're doing carnivore. And so, for example, I have a client who has lupus right now, and her markers have been steadily dropping, and we're doing mainly a version of a lion diet.
I've heard of lupus. What is lupus?
Yeah, so lupus is an autoimmune disease, and it literally mainly targets your kidney, but not necessarily just your kidney. It targets your organs. It's like your own body is destroying your own organs. You see like a red rash on some people. I don't know if this is like a butterfly rash that happens. It's inflammation in the skin. This is a main hallmark of lupus. They'll have symptoms like fatigue. They'll have joint pain, really bad, terrible joint pain, to the point where like they can't work out. So different people have different symptoms, but it's basically your own immune system destroying your own tissues. And this is what Selena Gomez had, which is why she had to do a kidney transplant, because it normally targets that first
Wow.
and foremost. Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know she had to have a kidney
Yeah.
transplant.
Yeah. And and now she's taking the drugs. You know, she had to take the immunosuppressant drugs, and now she's taking her drugs. And every once in a while she'll be in the headlines. Like she was doing a makeup get ready with me with like the makeup thing, and people were saying, why are your hands shaking? And she's like, it's because of the medication that I have to take. They shake a little bit.
So has she tried, you obviously don't know, she tried the lion diet, or has she tried?
Oh, I wish somebody would send her some of our
Yeah.
content. No, she
Yeah.
definitely has not tried it. I remember watching like What's in My Fridge. I think it was an MTV segment or something, and her whole fridge was all like ice creams and stuff. And no, she's eating a regular diet. Maybe definitely very plant-based, but definitely not carnivore.
This is the sad thing. Like, I often struggle sometimes in really putting my views across directly to someone, because I know they're at like totally other end of the spectrum. Like they're thinking, I need to eat more plants, I need to eat less dairy, I need to eat less meat. Like, and I'm like, if I tell you to just drop some of the plants and like get outside in the sunshine more and drop like some of all the processed foods and everything, you're gonna think I'm crazy. And tell you to eat more meat, like you're gonna think I'm crazy. And like, so I almost have to like drop in gentle stuff over time periods. And like, I mean, how do you do it? How do you get that point across? Like,
I don't think you can really I don't think you can change people or help them when they're not ready for help. And so when you go and you're trying to advise them, any unsolicited advice is like the worst thing you can do. So I don't offer unsolicited advice. I don't go and tell people what they should do, because I'll spend all my day trying to do that, because everybody has something that could benefit. So I just focus on myself eating and feeling my best, and my clients feeling their best. And once people go through their own transformation, other people will come to you then and ask you about it. And that's the only time you can actually potentially help them, when they ask you about it. But yeah, never offer unsolicited advice.
It's difficult because sometimes they're asking for the advice, and it's just so counter to what they've heard before. And it's like, right.
Yeah.
So I try not to give them all. I don't try not to talk about the Seventh-day Adventists, and I try not to talk about the stuff that's gonna just like overwhelm.
That's funny you say that, because me too. Now that I'm starting, being on TV shows, and people are starting to like, okay, she's not completely crazy, maybe just a little bit. So now they'll ask me, like family members, and I know it's a little bit of curiosity, but not really open to the message. So like you said, I just do the bare minimum that I can give. And again, the more it has to come from them, and you can tell if the other person is ready for it or not. And if it's just to make conversation just a little bit, then I'll just give like the bare minimum that I have to give.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't try to force it or try to convince them.
Yeah. And do you, after you've done the sort of deeper elimination diet, I guess, getting people to eat more red meat and getting them off the processed stuff, and like, do you try and like, do you allow them to add back in any like fruits, or this is it for them?
So the thing is, they are generally so happy with it that it doesn't come up as like, can I now go back? But what I do have more often is at the beginning, when they're still transitioning. So I have clients that I'm giving them, yogurt with strawberries, because they know that satisfies a craving for them, and then they're good if they have that, and then that's fine, because that person doesn't have an autoimmune condition. They're just starting on a carnivore diet or an animal-based diet. It's completely fine. We're hitting our goals. We're reaching the body composition that we want. And so I do add things like that on a case-by-case basis, because it's like a collaborative effort, because if it were up to me, I'd be like, just eat ribeye every day and end of discussion. But it's not like that. You have to work with them so that you set the goals together so that they want to follow them. So yeah, I definitely have clients. I've had clients that were still doing protein shakes, protein bars here and there, and that was still working. We're still getting results. Um, but at the same time, they know what the optimal goal is, and they know what optimal health, optimal nutrition is. Okay, but they're just choosing this right now because they don't want to jump into it just yet. Oftentimes, as you get many successes down the road, the motivation increases. So like my client that started with me, she started, you know, drinking coffee and cheese and just doing carnivore, doing great, still hitting all the marks. And there was really, it's not like I even pushed her towards it, but I guess from our conversations, she understood like if you if you don't want to even have that craving for cheese, and you can't have it every time you eat something addictive like cheese, you're gonna want it the next day and the next day and the next day. So it's by herself, she's like, okay, I'm ready. Let's cut out the cheese. So we cut out the cheese, and then she's like, okay, I'm ready. Cut out the caffeine. So now no caffeine. So yeah, you eventually the momentum really pushes people to set higher and higher goals for themselves.
Because that's interesting. I mean, it's just as much about food addiction as it is about like the nutritional science.
It's all about addiction. The whole reason everybody is in the state that they are overweight or obese or sick is because of the addiction, right? And I guess, yeah, there's part of it also, like some people will tell you, I'm not addicted, but they're eating a plant-based diet because they think that that's the healthier diet, even though clearly they're not in their optimal health or optimal fitness.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, everyone says, oh, we need to eat less meat because that's what's causing our issues. But you actually look at meat consumption has been relatively steady, and saturated fat consumption has been relatively steady. What all we've seen is things like seed oils and processed foods just skyrocket. So there's a real cognitive dissonance there. So like, I think Dr. Anthony Chaffee always makes the statement like, a lack of correlation shows that there is no causation. So the very fact that meat has not increased while heart attacks, strokes, and diabetes have increased shows that it's not correlated.
Right, exactly. End of discussion.
Yeah.
You got to have at least correlation to be able to then establish causation. But when you don't even have the correlation, then what are we trying to do, you know? And again, it's all about the money. Follow the money. You know, the American Dietetics Association, which is now known as the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, if you go to their conferences, because I have a lot of dietitian friends that go to their conferences every year, and they're like filming and everything, it's literally like an expose for all the food companies. You have the sugar companies, you have Coca-Cola. Not only do they have stands everywhere, they even have representatives and spokespeople that are presenting presentations to the registered dietitians for continuing education credits. Like, what?
It's so
really?
Corrupt. It's so polluted. It's so polluted. I think you saw my post today with like the number one recommended pediatrician brand for like growth infant formula for kids, and it's got like 25 to 30 different ingredients. The first one is water, the second one is corn maltodextrose or something.
Oh my god, that's sugar. Wow.
Yeah, and the third one is like soy lecithin or something. So like all these vegetable fats and sugar. Yeah, emulsifiers and sugar. And
that messes up your gut. You start developing leaky gut at such a young age. It's horrific.
And specifically, it was targeted at kids who are struggling with growth, so are not fat enough or are not putting on enough weight. And it's like, you've just stimulated this, like you've just basically put them on a road, like they might not be gaining much weight now, but you put them on a road to obesity. Like straight away. Like and they paid something like $300,000 in 2015 as a sponsorship deal for 2 years. This was Abbott Pharmaceutical, who inadvertently actually have a monopoly over nearly all of the infant milks and formulas. And so 300,000, and for that you can see all the internal emails, and they wanted to have the ear so that they would push the the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics would push their products to pediatricians, and the pediatricians would push that to the parents.
Yeah. Marketing 101, use an authority figure. This is exactly how the American Heart Association was put on the map. The American Heart Association was an unknown. It was literally 6 groups of cardiologists, very small groups all over the United States. And then the heads of those groups decided to band together and to form the American Heart Association. But still, you know, heart disease was still rare, and they weren't on the map. Up until Procter & Gamble realized that they could generate profit by also selling the waste products of cotton production. So you have all this cotton production, which is leading to a waste product, the cotton seeds. And so they decided to turn it into oil and sell it. So they granted the American Heart Association $1.5 million back then. That's money back then.
Big money.
And one of my students did the math, and he was like, yeah, that means it's $20 million in this day and age. So I had to double check the inflation rate and double check if that's true. But, you know,
I can see it.
That's a lot of money, right? And they granted them that money from their PNR charity arm, and from their PR charity arm. And in return, the American Heart Association started recommending seed oils like the cottonseed oil, and they came up with the Crisco, crystallized seed oil, crystallized cottonseed oil. And ever since then, you started hearing about the American Heart Association, because now they had millions and they have this authority status because they're doctors. And to this day, they're still recommending those kinds of oils. And it was very clear what Procter & Gamble wanted to accomplish, right? Similar to what the Coca-Cola has done with the GEBN. I posted about it a few days ago on my Instagram.
Energy Balance Network.
Exactly. GEBN, Global Energy Balance Network. They set up this scientific organization, and they got researchers that are sympathetic to this idea that it doesn't matter what you eat as long as calories in equals calories out. Ideally, you want to move more so that calories in can go up so you can eat more, right? And that's the whole goal. And it was only because the Freedom of Act, there was this organization that used the Freedom of Act to access internal employee emails amongst Coca-Cola employees, ex-employees, and they published it. It was literally published in a paper, in a scientific paper, and that's the one that I shared on my Instagram. And they're basically talking about how Coca-Cola, very clearly in their communications between the employees, wanted to make sure that that GEBN society would appear to be independent, and they wanted to distance themselves from it, right? But of course, the whole mission of the GEBN is to promote energy balance. And I went on their website. It's miserable. It's basically all calories in equals calories out. And it's
I think they got shut down, didn't they? I think they had to disband it.
Oh, really? I checked their website a few days ago, 2-3 days ago.
It might just be still lingering up there because, like, I remember because it got like outed, and people started seeing. They were like, because it's
maybe when the New York Times published the article about him.
It must be because, you know, like it's a process called astroturfing. So astroturfing is like when you see an organic grassroots movement where, like, oh, you see like the people at the bottom are saying, hey, we want this change from the government and big business. And big business goes, oh no, there's these pressure groups, and like, and then, well, we better change because everyone's up in arms. But it's called astroturf because it's fake grassroots movement. So it's like, oh, look at all these people who worry about energy balance. We better change and make sure everyone balances their energy. And it's like, just like you're saying, like they're just backdoored it. Like they're the puppeteers behind the whole thing.
Of course.
And I think it's used as like that global energy balance network is used as like a poster child as for astroturfing, for that process. Like it's crazy. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone's tried to pick it up and run with it again, because like this stuff gets lost. It gets buried in the media. You know, we're talking about Ukraine and we're talking about you know, the pandemic and everything else in between, and like
people forget. That's true.
Yeah. People are
Yeah, and
deliberately obfuscated.
yeah, and then and then not only that, in those emails they were saying like they wanted to co-opt politicians and journalists. So then you're supporting journalists to write a blog about the about some topic, and then they quote the GEBN, which is like this organization, the scientific organization, according to the GEBN. That's all you know. And then people, when you're reading an article and you're just going to be like, oh, that's an authority figure. They must know what they're doing. So I'm going to
Exactly.
believe it, Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the whole problem. It's and why it's so effective, because like people don't have time to research this stuff. That's why what you're doing is super
Yeah.
important, and like what we're talking about in these podcasts is so important, so that people go, hang on, actually, like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is actually full of shit.
Yeah. It's so, and the American Heart Association as well.
Yep,
And
put them on the
it's
list.
like it's really scary once you start learning all this stuff, because then it's like, what other organizations, what other authority groups am I believing at face value? Because I don't have the time to dedicate. I mean, it took me a very, very long time to get to this point. A lot of, first of all, the whole traditional education, all of it, and then working on research and working on the field for decades. And then on top of that, all of the documentaries and all of the interviews and podcasts and all the books. I mean, the sheer amount of books that I've read until I finally got here. Can you imagine every other field, like how much more energy I would have to invest to get to the real answer?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like one is chasing truth and one is saying, how can I manipulate enough people to make money? And you've just chosen the like, how do I chase truth and like help people with their actual stuff? Because you could have gone and worked for Coke, or you could have gone and worked for like Nestle or
I still
Bayer or
have the cards.
Monsanto.
Like Nestle wanted to hire me before I even graduated with my PhD. They were already giving me the cards and be like, yeah, when the moment you graduate, we need you.
Yeah, they're not stupid. They want the
I
minds.
think
They want
so.
the people who understand the system, because then, if you understand the system, you can manipulate it from within.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like
And this is, yeah, go ahead.
The crazy thing is, like, it goes even deeper, because I don't know if you've seen like the evolution of so many more like mental disorders and the categorization of mental disorders. There's stuff where you can actively see pharmaceutical companies who are saying like, we need to create a group of people who say that PTSD or postnatal depression is like a big problem. Keep pushing that out there. I mean, some people do have postnatal depression. I do not deny that. But things like that are pushed out to pressure groups, and lots of people start self-diagnosing with all of these depression and anxiety issues.
Yeah.
I do agree they are rising in society, but there are so many that of these undiagnosed categories. It allows them to then shoehorn their medications in more for people who are just missing nature. They're not exercising enough. They're inside all the time. They're under blue light. Their nutrition is off, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it allows them to say, oh, here's the pill that you need because you have bipolar, schizophrenic, X, Y, and Z disorder. And, they're creating it. There's a great paper on it. It's something like manufactured disease. It's like deliberately categorized diseases.
Yeah, send it to me. I would want to share that. Yeah.
I will. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And Chomsky talks about it as well. Noam Chomsky, he's this great philosopher, and he talks about manufactured consent, and like media companies and governments, politicians, all of these different groups have to create a narrative to manufacture the consent of the people to do certain actions. So in order to do things like the Iraq war, there had to be manufactured consent. We had to think that there were
just go invade the wrong countries.
It's like all of these examples of how the media works with government, works with big business to manufacture like consent and support for these actions. In the same way, we manufacture consent and support for different medical operations that are so unnecessary.
It's so true. It is so easy to influence people, so easy to manipulate people, because people are busy. They have jobs, they have kids, and it's like, how much time can you dedicate to every single major issue in life? Like you're just focused on making it, And so, it's very easy to get manipulated left and right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Exactly. That's the difficult thing, is that we have a limited amount of energy, and you can't put like 50% of your energy towards fighting corruption at the government level. It's just, you just don't have that amount of energy.
Impossible. So, but you know,
Mm.
when people get personally affected, like when they are struggling with their weight, when they're struggling with their mental health, with an autoimmune condition, then they are forced to deal with it. Then they are forced to educate themselves. And sometimes that's how we lead our lives. Like we won't really do the work we got to do until we're forced to it. And you know, no judgment on anybody, because I'm the same way. I was kind of forced into learning all this stuff because I was dealing with those things, and I refused to settle. You know, I refused to think that, okay, that's just going to be my life.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good. And I love that. I love that message. We've shot over time here, but that's good. It's all good stuff. But
It is good stuff. It's fine.
what's coming up for you in the future? What should people look out for?
So, I am doing coaching. I've hired 2 assistants right now. They're helping me out with, so content can be pumped out a little bit faster. I'm gonna be doing with the Reverse TV series, the show on the carnivore diet. We're gonna do a retreat in around April.
When does the TV series come out?
Around April as well.
Okay.
So that's why we wanted to put the retreat along with the TV, so that when people watch the show, learn about carnivore diet, then that's something that they can follow up on. And if they're interested in the retreat, it's going to be me and a few other carnivore influencers that are going to lead the wellness retreat, you know, for a few days. So I'm having that coming up. I'll probably going to be with Dr. Ken Berry in August in Orlando. There's a keto conference, so I just, you know, we're setting it up. We're not sure if, but hopefully we really wanted to work, me and Barry to be there.
Nice.
Yeah. And what else am I doing? So this is like on the nutrition part. And at the same time, I am rapping. I don't know if you knew about that.
No, I did actually. I saw on your profile that it said you rap, so I'm gonna have to check out your
I
raps.
just added it. I think I can finally put it now. Because yeah, we're writing songs, recording, working with producers, they're mixing it for me.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I haven't shot a video clip or anything, but that's another thing. Sometimes I feel like when you reach the top of a hill, and it's not as much of a challenge, and you want to start another mountain, you know, to climb. So yeah, those are kind of like the 2 things that take up most of my time. I do teach also Miami Dade College.
Yeah.
I do a lot of interviews, like, you know, podcasts, YouTube and Instagram. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
That's it. I'm gonna be seeking out this. Is there a rap video? There's no rap video out yet, but can I hear the rapping anywhere?
Yeah, there's one that I posted. So I'm posting them, you know, just like when I'm rapping over my songs. So if you go to my Instagram, it's pinned at the top all the way to the right. You'll
Epic.
see it.
I'm gonna check it
That's
out.
the first one. There's another one that's gonna come out in a few days, and then the third one this week. So I'm like, I just wanna, you know, practice and put as much effort into it. And then once I'm like, okay, this one is worth it, we're gonna film a video clip, then there'll be
What are you rapping
different.
about?
Everything and anything. It's not like, you know, I think it takes a while to really say this is my style, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, a lot of sassy stuff.
Love it.
Yeah, a lot of, you know, female empowerment. I guess you could call it conscientious rap. It's not, you know, it's not like there's
Not gangster rap.
Yeah, it's not like prison and drugs. Like that's not me. No, you know. Yeah, and in a way also, I like with everything that I do, I don't like to be boxed in. Like this is the only thing that I do, and that's the kind of rap that I do. I think, I don't know, it's hard to tell with creativity. You just follow what you feel.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's how loads of stuff evolves. And like, especially with things, creative things, we want to categorize ourselves and be like, I am this.
Yeah.
And then that stops you from like, oh, if I'm that, then how do I do that other stuff, which I'd like to do, but it doesn't fit with that box I've put myself in. Like,
exactly. Yeah. Like for me, it was so for me, I kind of like waited like a lot before I posted the first rap, because I'm already well known, you know, in nutrition, and I have like big accounts. Michaela Peterson follows me, and like a lot of like large accounts follow me, and I'm like, but then my hubby was like, you have to post it. You must every day. He was because he knew that that's really what I really want to focus on. And so yeah, eventually I did. But it's very easy to kind of label yourself, even though it's not like I set out to be a carnivore doctor. I set out to do YouTube, and then from YouTube, my carnivore videos popped up, and then people started associating me with the carnivore diet. But I am not the carnivore diet. I just happen to believe in it, and I like to eat that way, and I share that with my audience. And then, of course, then you get on a TV show for it. So now you are the carnivore doctor, but that's not my identity, you know. But sometimes, even as careful as I try to be, even I kind of worry a little bit when you want to do something else, because you're worried. In a way, you're boxing yourself in. I'm labeling myself. I'm a professor, you know. I am a doctor. You know how it's going to be like a shock for people to see a different side of me. And the truth is, people aren't like, yeah, maybe at first like, whoa, that's different, but everybody loved it, and everybody's still there. Everybody's still supporting me. So sometimes I think we make it a lot worse than what it actually is, because you are actually boxing yourself and you're actually labeling yourself in. And you got to be very, very careful, because people are going to try to do that to you, especially when you're a woman at every point in your life. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you know. And if you're a woman, they feel like they have the right to tell you what you're supposed to be doing. So you know, you at the very least, you can't do that to yourself.
Yeah, I think that's it's a good point. I think a lot of even men are feeling that now. They're feeling like oppressed, like by, you know, there's many men who don't feel like they can stand up. It's men and women. I mean, it might be a cultural thing growing up in Lebanon. There might have been more like male dominated society and everything there.
Absolutely. Yeah, even men, right? Like, toxic masculinity.
Yeah,
what does that mean? You know, it's not as clear cut as people would like to make it believe, as like the most media platforms would like to make you believe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But with your permission, I'll put your rap as an outro when this comes out.
Sure. Yeah.
If you're open to it, I'll get when the other stuff is there, then I think it'd be good for everyone to hear it.
Yes, do it. Just make sure you get the children out of the room.
Yeah. Oh, it's bad, is it?
Don't
worry, I'll put explicit content on there.
Explicit content, that's right. Yeah. We're rapping after all. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe I'll get the clean version from you at some point.
Okay. I do have a clean. I can, yeah. No, I think it's
no, we don't want the clean. Don't worry, we don't want the clean version. We don't want that bullshit here.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Yeah.
Okay. But Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time today. Where can people find you online if they want to see more about you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Finn. I had so much fun. You can find me very easily on YouTube, Dr. Sarah with an H, Zaldivar, Z as in zebra, A as in alpha, L as in lamb, D-I-V-A-R. And also on Instagram, I'm very active there. So it's at dr.sarah.zaldivar. I also have, you know, the Twitter, the LinkedIn, the TikTok, all that, the Pinterest, but I don't have the bandwidth to keep them updated, you know, as of now. I feel like I should focus more on Twitter, given the censorship that's happening in Instagram. But, you know, it's like when you already have a certain audience on Instagram, it's so much easier to keep going there as opposed to start building from the ground up on Twitter. So we'll see. But yeah, and my website, www.drsarahzaldivar.com. You'll see my coaching packages. They're all there. Yeah, very easy to find me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time, Sarah. And I'm looking forward to seeing more in the future.
Thank you so much.